So the plan for tonight, oh, my mouse just went crazy. Plan for tonight, we're just gonna get right into the Netflix assignment. It's gonna be pretty much all just hands-on coding. Some me showing you how to do it, and then I'm also gonna give you guys to do some pair programming to try to figure out some sections on your own. We're gonna push our code to GitHub too at the end of the night. We're gonna do it in the beginning too, just to make sure our Netlify sites are showing our changes. But we'll also do it at the end of the night. And that'll be helpful for you guys because once it's out there, you can also test it on your phones. My goal for tonight is try to get that profile selection page done, and hopefully we can start some of the other homepage. And since it's going to be a lot of coding, I will take a few breaks, so it's not too brutal. Before we begin, is everybody kind of hooked up with their Netlify site from Monday? Did anybody not get that far? It's okay if you don't know, we'll test that, but I just was wondering if anybody knows they're not at that point yet. So you were able to view so the way to check that is after we changed our site name, when you go to that URL, you should see Netflix and a blank page when you open that URL. You don't even have to change the URL if you just give it, click on the one that they provided. All right, so we will get started, and just a reminder, if you guys want to pop open this URL on your computer, just so you have that design always in front of you too, of the finished copy, copy and paste that from the slides. Okay. All right. Which one? That? No, that was on Netflix. I took that off Netflix. All right, so the first thing that I want you guys to do, our style sheet isn't connected even though it exists. So just connect your style sheet in the index file. And then we're just gonna change the body background color and push it just to see if our sites reflect that color. So if you want to get a head start, I believe the background color for the body should be 141414. Background. It's like dark gray. Also, you notice when I do my CSS, I do all my properties for that selector in one line. If that's too hard for you guys to read, I'll try to do multiple lines. It's just habit for me now to do it all in one line. You'll kind of see too in our final style sheet, we'll have so much that if you have select all your CSS properties on multiple lines, the style sheet gets really, really tall. So.
That showed us a way to build out lines.
Oh, in the index? Yeah, it's right here if you need it. So we're just going to change the body background color, and then we're going to push it so we can see that change on our Netlify site and just make sure our changes are showing. So for example, I changed the body background color to 141414. So 3 1s, 3 4. Alternate. Background will also work. It's just a shorthand, but I'm just typing out. Once we've done that, we're just gonna hit save. And how we showed on Monday, the GitHub tools for VS Code over here on the left. We're gonna stage these changes. So we're gonna hit the plus sign after we hover over the changes header. And for the commit message, we'll just say changed body EG, so short have a background. Once we've done that, we're just going to hit the check mark up here up at the top for commit. And hit the 3 dots to the right of that hole. Just get in the habit of that, even though nobody else is working on your repos. Just it's good to get in the habit of pulling before you push. And we're going to hit the 3 dots again, and then hit push. It might not have. Now that we push, if we go back to our Netlify sites, their URLs, and refresh, the changes should be there by now. Netlify is pretty fast, so I actually don't know what mine is. I'll go. Sure. Yeah, it can be any color right now. We just want to make sure the change happens. So now that I'm looking at it, actually mine isn't updated yet either. So when you're on your Netlify sites, if you go to the overview page and scroll down past getting started, production deploys, these are where you can see your commits that you've made within VS Code. It's basically your git commit message. However, I'm not seeing my changes either, which is interesting, because usually Netlify is pretty fast. Yeah, it's not there. The only thing I can think of, Cash, is it's looking inside CIC Netflix real. So the only thing I can think of is it's looking inside that subfolder, but I thought it was already pointing to that, so let me try that. / for one line, / asterisk if you want to do multiple. Yep, / in front. forward slash. Yeah. Yep, it should. Yep. So did anybody see their changes? You guys did? Some people did, some people didn't. So I think I might know what's going on because I'm also not seeing my changes. So I think it might be looking inside one folder, but it says it already is. Oh no, that's because I'm typing it. All right, so Netflix, real, save that. Already adds that, so we don't have to do that. Only the base directory, and sometimes it will. So it should reflect on the real URL. You should be seeing your gray background color, but for some reason it's not showing up. Oh yeah, yours is showing up here. I shouldn't need this. Might just be taking longer to publish the changes, but all right. So anybody else that isn't seeing it? Just Beth and Karen. Okay. Make sure it's right over here. Oh, that's 6 minutes. internship local file. That's what that. So that's not actually.
Okay. I got mine.
You got yours?
Yeah. It was. I still had a message over for GitHub.
Yep.
So I just had to commit it again.
That's the type.
Yeah.
It's not required. It's just yeah. It just tells the browser it's writing CSS. Yeah. So for some reason, I don't want this. Do you guys see anything? Do you guys see anything wrong with that?
I'm not even seeing the HTML.
Oh wait, I don't think that makes a difference. But no, you're not even seeing the title cache. How should be body background color? That's fine. Nope, that's not required. No. Sorry about this, guys. Yeah. Gotcha. Right. You guys got it?
No, okay. You did the CSS is not working, so I put the text in it inside the HTML.
Yeah.
So it is connected. You just the CSS file. That's all it's testing.
Interesting. Let me try closing it out. Just reopening it. Code. Interesting. Alright, so what I'll do, guys, is I'll just quickly create another folder just to restart this. If you guys want to take a break right now while I do this, that's fine. I'm just going to get this up and running again.
like with CSS. There was an
Is everybody back? Or are we still waiting for Elizabeth? Okay. So I'll connect mine to my GitHub again later, but for now I can just show you guys locally and you guys can still commit it and push it since it's worked for you guys. All right. Full screen. This one. All right. So when we look at this page to begin with, obviously the first thing we have up here is the logo. So I know Jeff went over some basic HTML elements with you guys. Since we're going to be reusing that logo on our main page, I'm just going to throw that into a header. That way we don't have to write too much different CSS for that page. And then I will open up a nav tag or navigation. And now this logo is also a link. So what we're going to do, we're going to wrap this in a tag. We'll just give it a class of header logo. And eventually, we haven't created this page yet, but we will link this to homepage.html. Yeah, we haven't created that file yet, but that's what it will be called. Everybody got that? So what you see with a lot of these images is I've set them as background images on their container. It just makes it a little bit easier to position them within their own container. And I'll show you guys how to do that right now. So instead of an image tag here, which you still can do, it's still a fine way to do it. I'm just going to do it a different way. I'm going to create a div. And I'm just going to give it a class of logo. Nothing inside of it. We're just going to use that to place the image within. Save that. We'll come back to our style sheet here. Before we get too far, one handy thing to add to all your style sheets is this. So this asterisk right here is called the universal selector. So basically anything you put within here will be applied to all the elements on the page. And what we're going to add here is box sizing, border box. It should autocomplete that for you if you start typing it. Yep. Yeah, I can start to add spaces. Yep, curly bracket. Now what this selector does, if you've ever noticed when you set a width on an element and then you add padding, it gets bigger than the width you set. This will make it so when you set that width, if you were to add padding to it, it already knows what width you want it to be, and the padding will move to the inside without actually making it bigger than the width you set. So for example, if I have an element like this logo that I set is width 80 pixels, if I put padding 20 pixels, it's still 80 pixels wide, but there's 20 pixels padding on the inside. It doesn't bump it up to 100. It basically makes it so you don't have to do that kind of math yourself. It will do it for you. Just a handy thing to add on all your style sheets.
Okay, and that's going to apply to everything?
That's going to apply to everything. Okay. So for example, if you didn't do that, you would then have to add it each time you would want that functionality to happen on that selector. This just adds it to everything by default. Alright, so like I said, even though there isn't much styling for it, I mean there is, but you just can't see it. we're going to get the styles for the header going because we're going to reuse them on the homepage. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a flex container. And again, by default, all flex containers are flex direction row, so we don't technically have to set this, but I think it's good practice and it's a good visual indicator in case you're going back to your style sheets and want to know what your parent flex direction is. So I usually set it flex direction row. Yeah, I usually do all my CSS properties in one line. It's just the way I can read it better. But if you guys want me to keep doing new lines, if it's easier for you to read, but you don't have to type it like that. If you want to do, display flex, new line, flex section row, that's completely fine. Yeah. It can be, but it also can sometimes make it easier because I'll just show you the final style sheet, for example. You'll see, get the folder structure out a little bit. I'll zoom out. So we have a lot of selectors. So if I were to put all those CSS properties on their own individual lines, this style should be like 500 lines long. So right now it's only 189. So it's personal preference, really. It's all up to you guys. This is just the way I'm used to writing it. But again, if it's hard for you guys to read, I can try to keep making them on their own line.
Well, the only thing that struck me before I really was going back and trying to make it tab even.
Yeah, again, this kind of avoids that.
Yeah.
So, pros and cons. So I'll actually go to the home page just so we can see what these styles will be doing a little bit more. So you can see everything is kind of vertically centered within the header. Obviously we haven't gotten a height yet, but you can see it will be vertically centered within the header, and it spans the full width of the page. So if we go back to our style sheets, for the main content, we just want it to start on the left-hand side, so we're just going to do justify content flex start. Again, that's the default if you don't set it, but it's just nice to set it so you know. And then we want things vertically centered on a cross-axis. We're going to use align items. Center. Now we haven't actually given this a height and a width yet, so this won't really do much. So what we'll do is we'll do width 100%, so we get it across the page. And I think I gave it a 65 pixel height. So height 65 pixels. So you also notice on the home page that when you scroll, the header always stays there. So what that is position fixed. So position fixed will take an element outside of its normal layout within the DOM and then put it where you want. So think of it as position absolute, but it doesn't flow with the page. So if you were to position absolute an element, it will go where you tell it to, but as you scroll, it will go out of view. So with position fixed, you tell it where you want it to go, but it's always there, no matter as you scroll. It stays at the top. So what we'll do here is we'll just do position fixed, and then we got to tell it where we want it to go. So we'll do top 0 and left 0. So on the very top and the very left. Technically, you could do top 0, right 0. I believe that would do the same thing, but I don't know. I always think of it as the left. Go back to this as well. You can kind of see there's equal spacing on both sides. So what we'll do on that to get that spacing on both sides is we'll just add some padding. So no padding on the top. Did Jeff show you how to write it shorthand? If you have a top value and a bottom value and a left hand, right hand. So the first value is top to bottom, and then the second value is left hand side, right hand side. You're padding 0, 60 px. That'll get us padding 60 on the left hand side and the right hand side. I got that. It doesn't matter where you put really any styling, unless if you write the same property twice, obviously the last one will take effect. But you'll notice, just as when you start coding websites, you'll get in a habit of doing certain things together. So I always like to do like my display flex at the beginning, then I do my widths and my padding, and then if there's positioning or anything like that, I usually put it at the end. Again, it doesn't matter, it's just a habit that you develop. It also helps too if you're working on a team and they're also viewing the style sheet, if they know when they're looking for properties that they're either going to be in the beginning or at least they're grouped together, it just makes it easier for other people to use.
So does each team just decide on any?
Some teams do. So like my team at AXA, I'm really the only one that really spends much time in the style sheets, so I kind of have free reign. But I remember when I was at Sidearm, we had kind of a set style where we would always do flex in the beginning, then our width, like I do here. And that's kind of where I developed that, just from working so much. But again, it doesn't matter. So if we were to save and refresh this, we wouldn't see anything, but that's just because there's no background color set on this. So just to check it, even though it's going to be transparent on that page, we can do background, and we'll just do blue for now, even though we're going to set it back to transparent. And refresh, we should see that blue bar up at the top folder. Is everybody getting that? Go back to the code. I'll help you guys if I could just get rid of the folder. I don't really need that open. Are you seeing that even? No, not on the Netlify page. So, oh, by the way, guys, if you're trying to view your styles right now, just open up the local index file in the folder in the Chrome browser. Yeah, if you're looking for changes now, it won't actually show up until you deploy it. So just open up your local HTML file in Chrome. Yep.
Yeah.
That one's me. Pineapple. That's who it's Jeremy. But that's black. So I don't understand why that's what you reach that.
As we'll get started. So let's turn off our blue background color. And we'll just change it to transparent for now, since we don't really want that to show up. Save, refresh, goes back to gray. Now for the logo. Select that logo. We're just going to do header, nav, and b dot header logo. What was it, Kat? Yeah.
At the end, people that it's not a style sheet, it's extract sheet.
Oh, it said just style sheet. Oh yeah. So it's a rel equals style sheet. I believe it stands for relationship.
Okay.
So we also use that in the type of the text.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't catch that. All right. So we got our logo selected. CSS slash style.css. Now we're going to set logo, and we're going to set the background image. So to set a background image, you have to give a width and a height to the container. So I believe it was approximately 90 pixels wide. And I don't remember the specific height. Let me check quick. So 92 pixels wide and 55 pixels tall. And we're just going to also set that as a display block.
So is this at the end of you're saying one?
This is a new selector, so we're just rewriting header nav a dot header logo. It just makes it so it's more specific. if we were to do just .logo, and then eventually we had another one, sometimes it could be overwritten. So it's always better to be more specific than less specific. Yep.
So the end of header.
Yep.
Like it's cut off on the side there. So then is it? Yeah.
Keep going.
Okay. All right. That's good. All right.
Okay. Good. Okay. So now we can set our background image. So to do that, we're also going to use the shorthand for background. And then we're going to specify a URL. This is going to be our URL link to our image. So we're going to do URL, parentheses, then I think single quotes. And now we need our pathing to our images. So we're going to do ... Since we're in the CSS folder, we're going to go up one. And when you type that /, it gives you a little preview of the other folders in that directory. We're going to go to images. You also see it recognizes all the images that are already in that folder. We're going to look for Netflix -logo.svg. To enter on that, we'll autofill that image name for you. Single parentheses, yep, and then single quotes. Yes, yep. Because we're in the CSS folder right now, so we have to go out one to then get to our images folder. Okay. So now we can set some sizing properties. So the first thing, and this is all still within background by the way, is we're going to say no repeat. So if we don't set this and the container that we set for this background image is wider than the image itself, what it will do to try to fill that empty space is repeat the image. You really never want that, so it's always good to set no repeat, unless you're trying to do like a pattern or something. So we'll do no repeat, and then we can set positioning. So we can position our image within the container a certain way. So what we'll do is we'll do center. So that way we'll take the center of the image and put it in the center of our container. I believe this first value is the top and bottom position, and then the second value is the left and right position. And one more property we want is background size contain. We want to make sure we can see the whole image within our container. We got that. Save, refresh that. I believe we should be able to see the logo now in the top left. Everybody see that? Go back to the code. In the beginning of that. Selector. Back to the end. Wrap it up. Yeah. Yeah, so before the clear braces, this just that matters is right here on the. Notice too, I can go back to the home page now. When we hover over this, it kind of animates out a little bit, makes it a little bit bigger. So how we do that is using a property called transform. Now when using transform, it's always a good idea to set this property first, which is will-change transform. Now this CSS property will allow the browser to use the GPU to render animations, so it just makes them look smoother. And we're going to just do transition 0.25 S and ease in out. Ease hyphen in hyphen out. Now what this does, I don't know if Jeff showed you transitions at all, but this just will animate any change between properties. Now there's only certain ones you should animate, primarily transform, color's fine, background color's fine, opacity, because those are the most performant. If you try to animate like a width or a height, what it does is it causes browser repaints. So for every pixel that it moves, it has to like reload that pixel, whereas transforms don't. Which is a good thing to keep in mind. Yep. Okay. I just want to double check. Okay. Yeah. Didn't show any of them. Okay, good. So now all we do is we want to change the size of that on hover. So we're going to use the pseudo selector hover. Did he show you that? Okay. Logo. So same selector as above, but then we're going to use :hover. Okay. So now above, we said that we will change transform. So that's what we're going to do here on hover, is we're going to transform our image. And there's a few different things we can do with transform. For example, there's scale, which is what we're going to use to make it bigger on the X and Y axis. There's rotate to rotate things, and you can provide it with like a degree value to get an exact rotate value. What else is there? There's skew to like change the perspective. There's a bunch of properties for this. I recommend going on CSS Tricks. They have a good they have a lot of good documentation on like fancy animation stuff like this. So you can kind of see scale makes this 20 times the size of what it originally was. You can do individual scale X if you only want to make it wider, scale Y if you only want to make it taller, all types of stuff. And then you can see the other properties that we have at the bottom. So there's translate, that's an important one, that's to move elements. We'll use that tonight. Like I said, perspective, skew, matrix. I'm not even sure what matrix does, but just a handy resource. This website's great to learn all sites. CSS, yeah. Go back to our page. Scale 3D. Not sure I can tell you. Yeah, you can try it out and see what happens. I'm not sure the exact value I use, but we can try this. So if you only provide one value, it assumes you want to do the scaling equally on the X and Y axis. So both the width and the height, they want to scale evenly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do scale and then parentheses 1.1. So we'll make it 1.1 times bigger of its original size. Save that. Refresh, and we hover, you kind of see it gets a little bit bigger. I might have done 1.2 on the real site, but don't worry about getting it pixel perfect. But I'm interested. Everybody got that? Yours isn't changing? Correct, it would be its original size. If you do 0.8, it will be small. So anything below 1 is smaller, anything above 1 is bigger. Alright, so if we compare this, the real site, pretty much identical. So we've got the header done for our homepage. So now we can start on this main container here with our profiles, and then this button to manage profiles. That's not going to do anything. It's just a dummy button right now. And then we'll link our first profile to our homepage. All right, so let's get started with that. So after our header, we're just going to open up a main tag. This just defines where like our main content is going to go on the page. Just a good semantic tag to have. And then we're also going to create a container. Div class equals, and we'll call it profiles selection container. Alright, so now inside profile selection container, we're going to create another div. We could call it profiles selection row. Now this profile selection container, this is purely going to be used for layout. It's not really going to be styled at all. It will, but not like visually. And then this profile selection row is going to be our little flex row with our profiles in there. 2 divs, yep. And they're nested inside each other. Yeah, so this one is purely going to be used to help us get vertically centered within the page. And then this profile selection row is what's going to contain our images for our profiles. So think of it as like we have main here. We're going to have a container that's around this. That's going to help us position these in the center. And then we're going to have profile selection row contain our profiles right here. So think of this is one container that needs to be centered, and then this is another individual container. It's within the larger container. So that's what I'm about to do right now. So to see that we have that big headline right there, who's watching. So for that, we could just use an H1 tag. And we'll just type in who's watching, question mark. Now we can give this a class, but since we have a unique container element, we can target only this H1 within this container in our CSS. It's okay to add a class, but it can just sometimes make your HTML look a little bit cluttered. So it's not necessary in this case. But again, if you are working on a team, that could be helpful if you gave it a class name that specified what it was doing. So it could be helpful if another team member might be doing this. So there's pros and cons. Before we get too much farther, we can start to lay this out a little bit in our CSS. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to just style our main container. And we're just going to give that width 100%. Give it max width 12,000 pixels. Usually what I go up to is like the max width for desktop. If I'm trying to keep it within a container. And then we're going to do a height of auto. As well as margin 0 auto.
What difference between height auto and height VH, which is what?
So VH is viewport heights. So height auto, it won't really set a height on it. It will allow it to be as big as kind of containing elements. Right, viewport heights will set a width to it based on the size of your viewport of your screen. Okay. We'll use some of those today too. So the margin 0 auto, again, it's by default it's width 100%. But if the viewport were to get wider than 1200 pixels, it'll make sure that all our content is still centered within the browser window. So that's what that does. All right. So now we need to get our profile selection container hooked up. So we'll just do .profiles selection container. Okay, have you guys guessed what we're going to do to this to make sure that anything that's inside of this container is centered in the middle of the page? Yes, mixture of all of them. Display, flex. Now I want it centered horizontally, so what do? And then I want it centered on the y-axis too. So align items. Bump that down to a new line just so it's easier that that's associated with that one. We have flex properties, but we need to make sure that this container is the size of the page. So what we'll do width 100%. And then we need to give it a height. So what we'll do is like you said, we'll start using those viewport heights. So we'll give it a min height, and we're going to use the calc function. And I'll show you why in a second. 100 dh, so as tall as the viewport. And then we're going to subtract the height of our nav bar. So we'll do minus 65 pixels. So if we give this a background color, blue, you'll probably see it starts at the top and doesn't go all the way down. So now my viewport is wider than 12,000 pixels, so that's why it's not going the full width of the page. But we can see that it's starting up the top. We really want it to start below the nav bar. So what we'll do on our container is we can set a margin top value. So I've already set a margin 0 on main, so I can just do margin top 55 pips. So if we save that, oops, sorry. Refresh. Now we can see it starts below our header and is as tall as our viewport. Now it's important that we set it as a min height because if our content were to go past that, then it would be cut off. If we set a min height, it will allow our items to dictate the height if it gets bigger than that. We don't have to worry about too much for the desktop layout, but you'll see on mobile why that's helpful. All right, so we've got that, and you'll also notice stage 2 that we put in there is centered right in the middle of the page. Yep. You see that? We can make it bigger. So bump these down to new lines so you guys can differentiate these a little bit more. Space between the calc. Yeah, that's an annoying one with calc. Be sure when you set a either a calculate width or height, when you give the two values, make sure there's a space before the hyphen and after. Otherwise, it doesn't read it. It's really annoying. I do that a lot when I do that. Now that we've got our stuff centered, we can start to style the child elements. So we can start off by styling that each one. First, we'll turn off our background blue since we don't need that. Do .profiles, selection, in there, space, each one. Now we can start to style that. Now we'll start to use our fonts that we've imported. So you can kind of scroll through these and see there's just a different font for each type of font weight. For this, I believe we're just going to use Pierre Sans Bold. So this one right here. So if you just copy this font family, and paste it down here, that will set that as Pierre Sans Bold. Now this is where Sass is handy because you can set all your fonts as variables and then just include them that way. So that is a pro of Sass if you're using it in your project right now. So I believe the syntax for like the Sass is like $, and the name, and then you could, after the colon, you can give your font family. So let's just save and refresh that and make sure that font is loading. If we refresh, it's black text, but you can see it is changing the font. So what we'll also do right now is we'll just go to the body and we can set a base font size and a base font. So that way, by default, if we don't set it on any element, it will at least get something. So we'll do font family Pierre Sans regular. It's a good one to use just in case something isn't styled. Paste that in. Since most of our website is a darker color, we'll set the default font color to white. Yep, this is all in the body. So all those are at the top of your style sheet if you just want to copy and paste those. And we'll also set a default font size. So let's just do like 14 pixels. If you save and refresh that, you'll see even though we haven't set a color or a font size on our each one, when we refresh, it changes that because we didn't specify, so it goes to the default set from the bottom. So obviously we want to make this bigger, so we'll do that. But before I go to that, I'd like to show you guys a really handy Chrome extension. It's called What Font. So what you do is you just click on this extension at the top, and on any website, you can hover over text, and it tells you what font family it is. So you can kind of see right there it says Pierre Sans regular. So we actually did use the wrong one, but we can change that. And then if you click, it gives you all the font styles, associated font styles with that element. So you can see for this, I used 52 pixel size font, 52 line height, which means I can change the line height. Color white, font there, just regular font. It's really handy. You can use it on any website. Mostly, like even if I use it on Netflix's website, real one, they're actually using a custom font. So it says Netflix Sans. And you can click on this and see all the font size. So they used 53 for their font size and 63 for their font height.
Is that something that you have on your computer?
Yeah, so you just go to the Chrome Web Store. So Chrome Web Store. And it's just an extension, so you can search for it. It's called What Font, all one word. And that's the very first one. It should be in the list. install, and then it should pop up right here. And then just to use it, you just click and then hover over stuff. Also, I don't know if Jeff had you guys install a color picker. Did you do that? That's also very handy. So if you just search here too, color picker. There's tons of them. Most of them are fine. You can pick which one you use. I'm not actually sure what the name of the one I use is, but they all do the same thing. So if we wanted to find out what any of these colors are, you can just click on this extension. It opens up a little panel. But we can... I don't know why it's not. Might not work on Google side. Let's try Netflix. They must have been blocking it for some reason. I don't know why they would do that, but so it gives you a little just cursor, and then wherever you hover that cursor, it gives you the hex code and the RGB value. So that's a good way if you're trying to match a design. Just use that extension, and then you can kind of find out specific colors they're using without having to go into the console and the console and see what they're setting in the CSS. All right. If you guys want to get those installed later and don't have them, I can help you out with that. But all right, so let's go back. So we found out from inspecting the reference site that this is actually Pearson's regular. So we can change that right here. So just change bold to regular. It's the same kind of starting for all of those fonts. So. And we also found out that our font size was, I believe, 52 pixels. What? Save that and refresh. You can see that's a lot closer to what it should be. So they didn't capitalize the second W. But again, don't worry about getting it pixel perfect. Very good, Caitlin.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just set a default font color. Is that what? Yeah, just because the website's darker, by default the body text is black, so it's harder to read. So I just set a default color of white. Now you see this is always in the center. If this was bigger and it would wrap to a new line, it would be left aligned. So whenever you're centering something with text, it's always just a good idea to also throw text align center on there. You won't see anything different in this case, but if it were to wrap to a new line, then that would make sure it still stays in the center. All right, so we're just after 7. Let's take a quick break again, and then when we come back, we'll see if you guys can get those squares all in a row. You're using a lot of the stuff we did in FlexFlex Froggy. So if you just think of those and try to replicate that with boxes, you'll be there. All right, so let's just take a quick break, and then we come back. We'll see how far we can get with the profiles. Everybody had those. Yeah, everybody has these class names, right? Okay. I'll keep that up there. Just to let you guys know, these squares are all 150 pixels wide and 150 pixels tall. So they're up to guess. Yeah, it might be helpful if you give those widths and heights on the squares first before doing your container styles, so you can kind of see what's happening as you change those. You don't have to make them different colors if you don't want to. We'll be setting the background images on each of those individually anyway, so don't waste your time doing different background colors. I'm sorry, guys. The profiles themselves are 150 by 150, but the containers aren't. They're a little bit taller, but you can just set height auto on those because the container is also going to contain our name below that. So we have our profile containers here, which contain our image, but they're also going to contain our content. So we can still just do the colors with profile container. Just know that we're going to put stuff inside that eventually. Keep in mind too what direction the content of those containers is going to be going. Even though we're focused on this one, you get ahead, try to deep in there. Notice there H2 in there. You have two items right now, side by side. What's our flex direction? You guys didn't catch that? So obviously we're centering this H2 with our big container that we made the bullet from the page minus the navigation. But the flex direction on that by default is row. So if you're trying to reorder this row right here, but you're seeing it to the right of your headline, you actually put so you have flex direction. What is the flex direction file? So it's pop up in the HTML for you guys again. So that's profile selection container that you would need to flip your flex direction on. Yep, so we would need to switch it to column. Because that's our big container right here. And we want element chosen, which is the headline. And then this row, and then our button is set. So if you want to, if you want to add background images, I'll show you. So images. So the first one is dog. And the second one is face green, face red, and face yellow. Those are the different colored ones, and then there should be one called kids section. Yes, kids section.png. So you can also, if you have the reference site open on your laptop, you can just inspect on those containers and see which images those are, what file names those are. It might be hard to tell, but you can see there's a solid border on each of these. You can tell that color picture section and hover over that, and it'll give you a graphic surface. It's just slightly lighter gray. Actual containers are actually determined with Flexbox, but you could set a width. But yeah, so those have a flex value of 1, so they're going to be equally sized. But you could also set a min width, so you could do like, since there's 5 of them and you want them to get there, you could do like 0.2 width. Do like a calculation of margin and stuff. Do like 0.2, 20% minus your margin values. Kind of like we showed with the news headlines yesterday on the Syracuse.com. Yeah. I think I use like H2s or H3s. And you can change these names if you want. You don't have to, you don't want to. You make it your own. A few more minutes and then see if anybody thinks they got it. Yeah, you only use flex value, Caitlin, on those. on the actual container. Fine.
They're all overlapped, but they're in constant. Yeah. All I did was put them in. I didn't do anything. I can do. See there? So I can just do it. I'm gonna do it, right? I want them smaller because I want color.
But since you said box doesn't order products, that would make it. So
Oh, okay.
and we were going to instead of order, it makes it up when it's happening.
Yay!
So now,
I have
so now
too much
that
margin.
the need to go, we get all line up for us. That is supposed to be. In documentation, your best friend, you know something. You know, so you've got the big container, now you are individual profiles. thank you. No, that's even better.
Thanks, though.
In my own style sheet that I showed, I didn't put the image in there yet. So you have to add an image and in the header.
Yeah.
So the header logo is within header and nav. Yes. Yep.
Okay, you specifically put in the,
Yep. Yep. That's exactly what I did. This one right here.
Yeah.
That one's called Kids Section PNG.
That one.
Yeah. Sorry. I think I gave the other images slightly more descriptive names. Did you get it? Did you get it? Nice. So if you've got the layout, see if you can do. Yeah. So those are your containers, right? The individual items. So see if you can add the image and the text below those. Not below them, inside of those individual containers. So if anybody's trying to do that part, for example, class profile TV. If you guys did inline images, that's fine. I just did it as a background image. And then we're going to need the name on this so I can name it 3. So that's going to be our profile image. Yep. Yeah. And in my case, I'm going to set it as a background image, but again, you can do it inline image if you want. It can work the same way.
I think it's just.
I don't know where I had this, but there was a mention that if to do like these classes web design, you can't like during the study they use or they ultimately you can't use PX, you have to use custom.
So in most cases, yes, you would use a width. In this case, they're all somewhat small with like 150 pixels. And I'm only going to do one media query to change the width to like 125. So that's why I'm just going to use like a hard-coded width. But in most scenarios, yes, you would want to use like percentages. It depends on the element you're trying to style, really. So for example, like the header, obviously I use a percentage because I know that's going to change a lot. So that's be something I wouldn't give like a fixed pixel width to. So like when you resize your browser, so either it could be overflow hidden, so it would like cause like a horizontal scroll bar. That's usually what happens most times. It's inside your big container, but right next to your profile BG, which will be my image. Sure.
No. Yeah. I do.
Again, if you want to find out what the font size and the font type of this is, you can use that what font extension on the reference site, and it will tell you what those values are.
Okay, so when we were talking about the things you know, the education thing that you're doing, you got your so you can walk into the class. You got teachers and all of it. There is clear that there is a profile selection training. So you actually select each one container profiles. And we haven't had this yet, but eventually. What? Each one is one's tied in your profile section, right? That's actually supposed to be one. That's supposed to be in our big page.
I'll show you my issue. So this is profile selection row right here, which has the profiles. That H1 is above that container. So if you just move that out in your HTML, you should be fine.
No, I answer. Because I wouldn't have the confidence to face
So if you add numbers, yes, so yeah, your content will be covered with numbers. Yeah.
Yeah, you have, yeah, yes, it's on.
But they would all be the same. Yeah, but you only wanted to know, they didn't.
Yeah, I mean, you can do that, but yeah, you can do that, but you know, they just found out if you can because they have to do something. So you know, you can do that.
So I don't really want to do anything.
Did you get the transition, Kayla?
So, oh, yeah, yeah. You can say,
Did you change the color of the H3 when you hover over the other one?
No.
See if you can figure that out.
Yeah. Well, it's yeah.
I mean, you have labels. It's that when you hover over.
Yeah.
So I guess, well, this is how we did it, Jeff. No. So I just did it. And now I just decided for a class called
I'm looking. Oh, wait, I found it.
so that I can get my small.
Oh yeah, 80, 80, 80. Hey, does anybody that got it, I think they have it, want to share how they did it? Caitlin, maybe? It's okay if you don't. Caitlin, did you want to share? That's
I
okay.
can't get the last one.
Just go through what your styles were.
Okay. So the final selection.
Yep.
And then I would just do it. And then just like my I changed the flex section to the column, so the title and the pictures stack on top.
Yep.
And then align items in the center.
Yep.
And then to get the profile side by side, I went to the profile section container.
Yep.
Inside into profile row. And I did the flex section row. And then just
You want to explain how you did the animation?
I just did it as a border on the image. I changed the border color.
Yep. So you got the picture part, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I can't get it to like the final border that parent profile container individual profile. That's the one.
But they both changed. Okay. All right.
And also in the profile selection. For the whole container column, which is the one, the H1 and the profile and how to do it.
Exactly.
Okay, perfect. That's good.
Okay.
So this profile container is 100 pieces. So how do I just like pick these?
So there's somebody who's that so we have to
So what do you think I'm understanding? So what the blue profile container is profile container. Also now I
so those are
I mean, the internal map. So it's not a
so that's what we're doing. Profile.
I just use the image selector.
yeah. So right now that's 20% of
Yeah.
Okay.
so the pictures are 150 pixels.
So 50. And that's up here.
Yeah, so you
So if I want each of them,
Within. Yeah, within a height set.
I get started on my own.
So I'll show that. I just like it for positioning purposes. I think it looks nicer too. So like, if you do like an inline image and you click and try to drag on something, usually it'll like take the image with you. If it's a background image, it won't do that. So if you're going to be like doing things that are like clicked on, it can look weird sometimes. The one bad thing I will say about background images is the accessibility is shaky, because you can't directly set like an alt tag on the image. So most of the time it is better to use an inline image if it's going to be representative of what's on the page, because that way you can set the alt tag and then the screen reader will be able to see that. and just read out loud what that image is. It's not too important. Yeah. Where accessibility is very important in your site, even though it's just a demo, which it always should be. I would prefer online images. So it's just like we did the logo. So background and then URL, which would be the link to those individual images. And then we'd want our sizing, so no repeat, center, and then background size contained, so we can always see the whole image. Yep. Yeah, yeah. The color picker? Yes. So we go to
Is there tons of them out there?
So, how much more do you
what was the color you needed?
I just was wondering.
Oh, okay.
He said, then you can get the height.
You're super close. I mean, you basically have it.
No, this is pretty good. But if you see you had a dot, click a dot, like it's a little bit more.
So when I do that, a dot always signifies that it's a class name. So if you add a class to an element, you always want that dot. As for H3, that's an HTML element, so that doesn't get a dot before it. All right, so I'm going to start coding this on my screen. If you guys are stuck and you guys want to follow along. So I'll start with my profile selection row. And on my big container, the profile selection container that's picking up the entire page. We need to set our flex direction, so we do flex direction column. The that was the only thing we added to the big container. And now if I do dot profiles, profiles, selection, row. And then we need to get that going important now. So we're going to do display flex direction, row. Now those are all centered, and then the space between is actually being used as margin. We could set like a width on this and then do space between or space around either one of those. But I'm just going to choose to use margin to space those out. So I'll justify content, enter, and then I want them to be vertically centered within the container. Now you guys probably didn't add this yet, but you'll see on the reference site. But when we resize the browser window, those items resize at one of the viewports, and then they start to wrap. So we can set flex for wrap right now, or we could do it at the media query. I think there I did it at the media query, but we can just set that by default. Because it's really not going to change the behavior too much, at least with these images. So.
So, I did that. And I added just on the line and then I thought they moved up over his block. Yeah, see?
So you set line item center on your row.
I just put line item second. But before, when I took things up,
Yeah.
I didn't either justify. If the profile justify, I didn't just second and when I take a line out, it gets back to the second. I don't think there's such a so, but you put it in.
Oh, it looks like you can have a fixed height on it. Height 100 pixels. So you can type in we won't actually see that. We can set like a mid height, but you'll see when those items wrap, it's a fixed height. It's not that.
Now it's a blue.
That's right.
No, because before it was on the black.
If you set the background for on container, that's going to be inside.
Correct, but the names were on the black before I did that. Before I put in made those changes.
Right, which is what we want.
You don't want that, right?
Yeah, so
that's
how it's supposed to be.
It is.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Because so those names are still in the container.
Okay, so now.
And the container is what has this guy.
Okay.
That's it. Yep.
All right, so for like an image, if you're going to inline the image, you don't need a class on that. So you could style it with profile container space image if you wanted. So I'm doing it as a background image. Did you do it just as an inline image or no? Here, I'll just put it.
So these are the my image of that. We don't need that to be well, one will be enough. So you don't need but that would be
Alright, continuing on. So I've styled my row, but I haven't given a width to any of my individual items. So I'll do dot profile container. And these are going to be the containers for the images and the names. So we're going to do display flex. The profile picture and the name are stacked. So we'll do flex direction back to column. From top to bottom, I believe they're just flex start, justify content flex start. So the image starts at the top of the container, and then we can add some padding to the top to the name to give it that vertical space. So justify content flex start. And then the name and the image are horizontally centered within those small containers. So it's line items center. So you see there's a little bit of space in between these items, and all these containers are sized the same. So we're going to set a flex value of 1 on profile container. So that means that all those items with profile container will be the same size. And to get our space between those items, I'm not sure exactly what I used. We'll just try 0 and 20. No margin on the top and bottom. We might want to add some, but 20 pixels on the left and right of each of those. So if I add a background color to this, I should see those. But I might not because I haven't styled the content below it yet. So they're there, but again, we don't have the images in there yet, so they're not going to really know to get bigger. So let's do dot profile container dot profile bg. And this is going to be my profile image. So I'm going to do width 150px, height 150px. Before I forget, we're going to set it as display block. Now that we have a width and height on that, we can add the image, background, URL, images, and the first one is dog. We don't want it to repeat. We always want it to be center. We always want that image to be contained within the width and height that we set.
So if I want to change from the thing I need and this is what?
Background image.
Background image. So then I would just do all of that in CSS. Put that images on HTML.
If you were to do inline images.
I have it in there.
So you'd set the width on there, your height, but you don't need your background no repeat center set.
But I don't need my background, do I?
Yeah,
Oh,
you,
so I don't
yeah,
need to remove them.
right.
Okay,
Because it's inline.
okay, and the other two things, okay.
Don't need that. You don't need any of those. Yep. So flex colon 1 is a default flex value. So you can use that to size items in Flexbox. Say I had only 2 items in this row, and I wanted one to be twice as big as the other. I could give one flex item a flex value of 1, and the other item a flex value of 2. And the one that has flex 2 is always going to be twice the size of the other banana. And you can do like flex 3 and flex 1. That means it's going to be 3 times the size. So it's just a different way to size things. Save this. You can see right now they're all dog, but they have the width and the height. Do you know where? Did you put it on the container? Right, so you just want the width and height on the image itself. So you did so you put the width and the height on this, right?
Yeah.
So you want it on your image. So for me, that's profile BG is the class I give. Now you'll see that these images have a border on them, so we can add that. Just go over this. It's just border is the property. They do have all their different styles as separate kind of CSS properties, but it's much easier to do it all in one line. So if you do border, the first thing is you give the border width. I believe it's like 5 or 10 pixels. We'll do 5 right now. You give it the border type. For this, we want solid because we want a solid border. I believe the other options are like dotted. You can do dashed line borders. There's a few different ones, but most of the time you just want to use solid. And then you want to give the border color. So I will look into so it's 1F1F1F is the border color. You notice when we were hovering over that, the border color changed. So if we know we're going to change the border color, we can add a transition on this. And do 0.25 seconds, ease in, out. So I don't know if I explained this when I first used it on the logo. So the transition property first takes a timing value. So this is how long the transition is going to take to complete. And then the second is called the easing function. So if I do ease in, out, so just do ease in. This transition by itself doesn't. Let's see that run all of them. Let's see, because sizing border box, even though I added a border to the 150 image, it's still 150. It takes the border into account when adding the width. Alright. So one thing you might be wondering if you do background images is how to get them all to be different images even though they have the same class name. So one way you can do this is is using nth of type. I know I've showed some of you guys how to use that selector on like your capstone projects. So profile BG, and then it's colon nth of type. So for example, if I wanted to change the second one, so I believe it's red, I can specify on this that I want images, I want face red.png. Again, I don't want it to repeat. Enter, enter, and I want it to be contained. Whenever you use that shorthand background property, if you try to then do like an nth of type where you're like trying to override the values, you always have to provide the other ones, because if they're not existing, they'll think they're the defaults. So that's why we have to repeat the no repeat center and background size contained. Save that. And refresh. That did not do anything. Wouldn't. Type 2. Profile container. Profile BG. Let's check out the browser. So we have profile container, profile BG, type. See that? Oh, I know why. Okay. So this is one kind of confusing thing. So I'm not actually selecting the second image. I want to select the second container in the row and then set the background image. So I have this backwards. So if I move this to here and then refresh, you can see it changes. Does everyone get that? So when I was originally selecting it, I was looking for a second profile BG, but only within profile container. So it was thinking images. So I'm going back out to the row and then getting the second profile container and then changing it into the. So that's what that did. That's why that wasn't working initially. So again, I can just copy and paste this. And we can do the third one. What color is green? Is that green? Green. I change the nth of type 3 and then change it to green. Yes. Yep.
So,
Again, your way is fine.
I was just gonna say, if you don't have the alt text.
Right. That's what I was. Right. So that's what I was mentioning. For accessibility, you definitely would want an inline for things that are descriptive of what the page is, because you can't set an alt tag on a background image. Now I'll do the other one. So. Kids one. So So I'm going to do nth of type 5. One other selector you might have seen is first of type and last of type. Technically, first of type is the same as nth of type 1 in this case, and then last of type would be nth of type 5. Usually, it depends on the situation, but if I wanted the last one to always be, for example, like kids section, I would definitely use last of type, because if I were to add another child element to that, then these selectors might be out of order. So if you know it always needs to be the first one or the last one, use those. If there's a specific number that you're trying to target, then you can use nth of type. So, alright, so now I got all the images in there. I can turn off my background color because I don't need that. I know we're at 8:30. I'll just try to finish this and then we'll pick up tomorrow. So now I will do the hover. So Caitlin, this is what you were wondering about. So to make sure that we change the font color and the border color on hover, we set the hover element on the container itself, and then we can target the children. So if we do profile G, and I do border, so we should just be able to do the border color property, and then I'm changing that to white. And then I can also do profile container hover, but this time I want to style that H3. So I can do color right after doing something. If this was like SAS, then you would mostly do that profile container, and then like open brackets and hover, do a super selector. And then inside of and hover, you can do a line profile BG and profile, or so you can mess them within that. Okay. Yeah, we can take a look at that tomorrow if you want. Okay. So it's kind of hard to tell right now because of the H3. I didn't change the color of the H3 or the font. But it is, I'll change it right now just so you guys can see if you don't believe me. So we'll do that profile, container, H3, and we'll grab one of those fonts. I think it's just regular, and bold. Font size 16. We'll do color it. Save that until it's darker. But you'll notice, so right now, the border's transitioning, but the H3, it happens right away. So what do we have to add to the H3 to get that to animate as well? Yes, transition. Yeah. So we'll go to profile H3, and we'll give it the same animation as the border. We're going to do 0.25 seconds, and we're going to ease it in and then out. So now you see they both animated at the same time. Yeah, so there's 3 values in that kind. So there's ease in, which will animate this border color in, but as soon as I would hover, it would immediately take it away. So if I change, the transition property on profile BG, just because that'd be a little bit easier to tell on the font color. If I change that to ease in, eases in. Well, that's actually doing both. Did I change that one wrong? Yeah, but that's supposed to only ease in. It might be being overwritten by something, but what it should happen is ease in, animates it in, and as soon as you leave the hover state, it will then immediately change back to its value. Yes, exactly. And then there's ease out, which will then do fast and then slow. And then ease in is like slow, normal, and then slow. Yeah, so it animates both ways. Most of the time, I always do ease in out, just because it looks weird if only one is fast and then it immediately goes away. Right? So this is a little bit different than what we have, but we have the main things there. So I think we'll stop here for today, just so we don't go too far over. So what are your styles that you have on profile? That should work. So you could do it with flex or you can do it with text line, I think, in this case. So these ones? Okay, let's take a look. Yep, so those are the names.
Right, when I have profile picture. Wait, is profile container that's what you call the picture?
Oh, it's the bigger container. Profile BG is language. What's that? That's a shorthand property. If it's always going to be the same letters, you can do the first three, and it acts as if there were 6. So for like black, you can shorthand as 0, 0, 0. So the border is on the image itself. So for me, that's profile BG. You guys are see if you can add in the button. Don't worry about linking this to the new page yet. See if you can add in the manage profiles button at the bottom. Okay? That'll be the homework for tonight. Yep. This is the right section, right, Karen? Okay.
I'm kind of lost because you have the background.
With my damn self.